If you are considering how to make your home greener while protecting yourself from high energy costs, investing in solar could be just the thing for you. But it's important to have a good understanding of what to expect before parting with your hard-earned cash. Do they work in winter? Do you need a south-facing roof? Can they generate enough energy to be off-grid? What's the typical payback timeframe, and what maintenance is required? Stick with me for the next few minutes and I'll answer all these questions and more. You'll know exactly what to expect from solar and be able to decide if it's right for you. How do solar panels work? They are placed in an outdoor setting, often a roof. Each one contains several photovoltaic cells, which are designed to absorb photons, also known as light energy. This excites the electrons within the cells, creating a direct current electrical charge. In order to use that in our everyday lives, we use an inverter to convert the DC power to AC. When talking about solar panel installations, there are a few terms you're bound to hear. The first is kilowatt peak. This is a measure of the system capacity, using the total combined standard test condition ratings of all the panels. An example here is 4 times 450 watt panels plus another 4 times 450 watt panels equals 3.6 kilowatt peak. It's important to note this is not a measure of expected daily output, nor is it a value describing continuous power output. To understand this number better, let's explore what standard test conditions are. These standard test conditions are a universal measurement of a solar panel's potential output in near-perfect weather conditions. As part of the testing process in lab conditions, all panels are exposed to solar irradiance of 1000 watts per square metre. They have a controlled temperature too. It's 25 degrees C, and even the air mass is closely controlled. The resulting number of these tests is what forms the rated output value for the panel. This is what you will see on all the manufacturer's marketing materials and spec sheets. The idea being this is a fair test which accurately allows anyone to compare panels in a like-for-like scenario. But while this rated output is an important number, it needs context, so I look very closely at something called module efficiency for each panel. In 2025, a strong value for this is between 22 and 24, and it's expressed as a percentage. Module efficiency takes into account both the physical dimensions of a panel as well as its rated output. The idea being, a large panel with a high rating may not be as effective on a limited roof space. Take this example, we'll call it option A. There's 8 500 watt panels which will fit on a defined roof space. This makes a total system capacity of 4 kilowatts peak. Option B consists of 450 watt panels, but crucially they are smaller, so it would fit 10 on the same roof space. Despite the lower output per panel, this system would have higher capacity at 4.5 kilowatts peak. Sometimes panels of lower rating but higher efficiency can result in superior system size, and this is important, particularly where you have a limited roof space. Another key consideration when choosing solar panels is the warranty length, and it's fair to say they're really built to last these days. It's standard for most modern solar panels to have a warranty of at least 25 years as a minimum. The longest I currently know of on the market is 40 years. For some perspective, that's half the lifespan of a healthy human being. That's pretty impressive, and even after that, the expectation is the panel should be capable of performing above 80% of its starting output. So many assertions that solar panels need replacing every 10 to 15 years is complete nonsense. Many spec sheets show what's known as a degradation curve, representing performance levels over time. Here's one. Notice after 25 years, it's expected to still perform at 89.4% of its initial output. I sometimes hear statements of people saying, solar panels, they only work in sunny conditions. Or sometimes people question, do they work in the rain? The first thing to understand is it's not a binary on or off. The power generation is directly related to the amount of light exposure. If there is sufficient daylight, they will be generating. It doesn't have to be direct sunshine, but let's just look at some case studies just to see how much it varies. Let's start with some data from summer 2024, which is widely regarded as a pretty poor year for solar generation. These graphs show generation on the y-axis and time of day on the x. This is a south-facing 5 kilowatt peak system based in the West Midlands, UK. We have data from June the 2nd, which was a beautiful sunny day with no cloud cover, the kind we don't get too often here. Conversely, the data below was from June the 3rd, the very next day. It was wet and cloudy. The output on the sunny day was 36 kilowatt-hours produced, and on the wet and cloudy day it was 12.3. In summer there is plenty of light. Even on days where we consider it to be bad weather, the generation is still surprisingly reasonable. The question then becomes, do they work in winter time? The sun is much lower and the daylight hours are massively reduced, so this does reduce generation. We are looking at around about 8 hours of daylight in the winter time versus around 16 in the summertime. But the good news is they do still function. Even though the days are shorter, they will still be generating, just not for as long. Let's look at some more case studies for the same 5 kilowatt peak south-facing system, this time in the month of November. Notice the generation hours are now short and the peaks are ever so slightly lower. November the 24th was a very dark day and only produced 1.3 kilowatt hours, which was one of the lower results of the month. Having said that, there were no days in the year that had zero generation. But those sorts of outputs in a dark winter's day, it's not that unusual. In contrast, a sunny day just 2 days later provides a competitive 18.5 kilowatt hours still, limited really by the shorter daylight hours. Let's look now at seasonal variance across the year because it's a key point. Solar is undoubtedly more effective in the summer, but there is still generation in the winter months. It's easy to be disappointed with a system's performance if installation happened in the winter, only to be pleasantly surprised through the spring and summer where monthly output can easily triple. When getting a quote from any installer, they should provide a graph or numbers representing something similar to this diagram on the right, with December frequently being the lowest for generation, and May, June and July typically being the benchmark. A completely free tool I like to use to estimate solar generation is PV Watts. It uses historic weather data from your chosen location to simulate an estimated system generation based on some parameters you can input. There are other utilities which do something similar. There's one known as PVGIS, which is very popular, but I prefer this one because it's a little bit more user-friendly. It just asks for location data, proposed system size in kilowatts peak, the module type, which I put in as premium these days, most of them are that level, array type, which roof mounted I think for most people is appropriate, system losses, it's down as 14.08 to begin with, I tend to lower that to 7 to 10 depending on the system, roof gradient, this is typically between 30 and 45 for most roofs, though they can all be quite different, so it's best to do a visual check and estimate based on that. And finally, perhaps most importantly, the azimuth, which is the orientation of the system, south being 180. Upon completing this, the system will output an expected generation for all 12 months and give you an annual figure. It's a good way of verifying if installer targets are reasonable. Looking at those daily graphs from earlier, you might have already noticed that solar does have a very obvious weakness, and that's that it can only generate during daylight hours. This is where batteries come in. They can really help fill the gap. You can use your own solar power through the night and beyond with a battery installed. There are also smart tariffs available where you can directly import electricity to fill a battery at a lower rate of electricity and then export it at a higher rate. This can be highly effective during the winter months when solar generation is more limited. It can also improve the rate of financial return and improve your ability to be more self-sustainable. This raises the question, could you go off-grid altogether? The answer is, it's really not advisable. No matter how powerful your system is, there will always be prolonged periods of bad weather where generation will be highly restricted. It's typical to use more electricity in winter months too, for additional lighting and heating. Some batteries can function in a temporary off-grid island mode, which is useful during power cuts and things like that. But ultimately, there's nothing to gain from a permanent disconnection. To make solar worthwhile, do you need a south-facing roof? While it's the optimal orientation, with the highest quantity of sunlight, there are other options. East-facing systems are great for extracting the morning sun until midday, where they start to tail off. West-facing systems, on the other hand, are great from early afternoon all the way into the evening. It's also possible to mix and match orientations with the right setup. It's something I'll cover in more detail in another video. Here is some more info from the PV Watts database. It shows how expected generation differs depending on system orientation in my local area. Naturally, east and west are very close, at 77 and 79% respectively. Even a north-facing system is not a total loss, at just under half the annual effectiveness of south. It's worth noting, this example is at a 40-degree roof pitch, and that can make quite a big difference to these figures. Which moves us on to roof pitch. A steeper pitch captures more sunlight when the sun is lower. Shallower pitches are more suited to when the sun is higher in the sky. Also, when considering north-facing panels, a shallower pitch is an obvious advantage because the panels spend less time being shaded by the very roof they sit on. Shading can be very problematic for solar panels. They can only convert light they receive to energy. Locations which are permanently shaded are unlikely to be a good fit for solar panels. Shading is typically different depending on the time of day and season. Note in the bottom two pictures how the shade profile is distinctly different in the afternoon compared to the evening. But most of these panels spend a good amount of time in direct sunlight, however, so even though they're compromised to some extent, they're still worthwhile. So what maintenance is required? Thankfully very little. With no moving parts and such high durability standards, there isn't much to worry about. They are made to withstand the worst the weather can throw at them. Occasionally it might be worth washing the surface of the panels. Depending on the roof gradient, rain does typically do a good job of cleaning them naturally, but it's worth avoiding any substantial build-up of bird droppings or algae, as that can act as shading. In some cases, depending on the brand of inverter, it might be necessary to restart it following a power cut and things like that, but generally there's very little human intervention ever needed. Now for the scary part, what does it cost? It varies depending on system size and installer. A small system such as 3 kilowatt peak might only cost £5,000 to £6,000, but large systems such as 10 or even 12 kilowatt peak might be approaching the £12,000 mark, and you'll need to set aside another £2,000 to £8,000 to add a battery. But for a system that large, you'll need a sizable roof area. Generally speaking, higher capacity systems tend to be much better value. In my opinion, it's always worth getting quotes from multiple installers to compare systems and prices. On to savings, and it's typically slightly different for every system, but here are some examples. A small 3 to 4 kilowatt peak system could reduce bills of a typical household using 2,700 kilowatt hours of electricity annually by around 50%. A large system of 8 to 10 kilowatt peak along with battery storage can reduce the annual electricity bill of 1,500 to below zero with the right tariff. The payback timeframe can vary quite drastically depending on a number of factors, but it typically sits between 7 and 14 years. Some key aspects here are system cost, system size, orientation, pitch, shading profile, and of course the unit rates of the import and export. And don't forget, these vary over time. One thing worth noting is that it will add value to your home the very day you install it. I hope this gives you the best possible picture about what to expect from solar in 2025. Let me know if you have any questions and I'll do my best to give you an accurate answer. Subscribe if you're interested in my own renewable energy journey. I release monthly videos tracking the performance of my own solar panels, which can be good reference to know what to expect. If you're seriously considering the purchase of solar panels, I do have a referral link for £250 off at Heatable, who installed some on my own setup. That's all for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.